Please state your name for the court.
Dr. Richard Offshee.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a professor of sociology at the University of Oxford.
Okay, can you tell the court and the jury a little bit about your education and background?
I received a bachelor's degree in psychology from Oxford University, and then a master's degree from sociology from the same institution, then a PhD in sociology department of Oxford University with a speciality in a subfield called social psychology.
And do you have any experience or training in the area of influence, more specifically in the area of influence with regard to police questioning?
All of my work over the last 10 years or so has been on the subject of influence having to do with decision making, group influence and interpersonal influence. I specialise in studying cult groups that generate violence. During that time I did a great deal of work, often involving analysis of groups that led their followers to commit murders. I did a lot of work for the prosecutorial agencies analysing and prosecuting such crimes. Then my interest in influence continued and I began to become interested in the study of police interrogation. Police interrogation is the root of techniques that have to do with coercion, confessions from individuals and generally manipulating them in extraordinary ways.
Has any of your work been published?
Yes, I've published 2 books, 10 or more articles in scientific journals and presented papers at many conferences over the years. I work on these subjects that has been published. Also, I shared in a Pulitzer Prize for public service.
Have you served as a consultant to any law enforcement agencies?
Oh yes, many.
Have you ever testified on behalf of the prosecution in a criminal case?
I don't believe so. I have to look at the list of cases of which I've been involved.
And how many cases dealing with confessions have you been involved with?
Confessions specifically 13. I've been involved in many more cases.
How many times have you been qualified as an expert in the area of influence and police interrogation?
25 times, 13 of which were specifically confessions.
And what is it that you studied in relationship to this case?
In this case in particular, I've studied the following materials: the police reports and notes of Detective Gitchell Ridge and Durham, the transcript of the first and second tape-recorded interrogations of defendant Jessie Misskelley. I've listened to the tape recordings of both interrogations. I've studied the treatment records of Jessie Misskelley at Birmingham Mental Health Centre. I attended a hearing for this case in January the 13th, in which I heard and saw the testimony of the detectives with respect to what occurred during the interrogation. And I subsequently reviewed the transcripts of the hearing. Then I interviewed Jessie Misskelley on January 15th and have carefully reviewed, studied and analysed the transcript of that 3-hour interview.
Doctor, is it possible for police interrogation tactics to produce a false confession?
Yes, I don't know anyone who works in this area who does not acknowledge that false confessions come about in the course of police interrogation.
And are certain individuals more susceptible to coercive tactics than others?
Generally, it's been found that individuals who are lacking in self-confidence are more persuadable and likely to respond to coercive tactics, producing false confessions.
Can you tell the jury how you analyze a confession?
That starts with determining whether or not the interrogation has been tape recorded. Then the analysis of the influence process during the interrogation is fairly straightforward. When police agencies have not recorded the interrogation, the problem is much more complicated because it's necessary to try and reconstruct the events of the interrogation from the available information. In this particular case, 2 recorded statements of Jessie Misskelley has given us a great deal of information about what happened during this interrogation and illustrates certain things about the tactics that we used and the suggestibility of Jessie Misskelley. In terms of how he responded to particular tactics that are simply captured in the recorded part of the interrogation.
And doctor, I believe you stated earlier that you had a look at this case with regard to Jessie Misskelley.
Yes, I did.
And you've read the transcripts of his statements to the police, both statements?
Yes, I did.
Have you listened to the tapes?
Yes.
And you've heard the officers testify at a previous hearing?
Yes, I did.
And you've interviewed Jessie Misskelley regarding his interrogation and his confession?
Yes, I have.
Doctor, have you formed any opinions in regards to this case?
Yes, I have.
Could you tell the jury what that opinion is?
That Jessie Misskelley was coerced into confessing for this crime,
meaning
that Jessie Miss Kelly's confession was false.
no further questions. Thank you, Dr. Afshi.